Hi there, I'm Jakub, and now it's the time to speak about rules and laws for e-bikes. I know it's a bit boring topic, but I would love to make it a bit more entertaining for you. Let's go for it. I will speak one slide about China, a couple of slides about US, and most of the slides will be about Europe, which is my home territory and also kind of innovation hub for e-bikes nowadays. So let's have a look at China. I was in China probably 14 years ago for the first time, absolutely amazed about all electric scooters and so-called electric bikes there. Sometimes the scooters only have had cranks, no pedals, but they were seen as electric bicycles. The current regulations, which take place in 2018, I think, regulated electric bicycles to 25 kilometers per hour. Before that, there were no regulation. There is still no performance limit for e-bikes. They still can have a throttle, but the helmet, at least in some cities, I heard, is compulsory. So the electric scooters, bikes are not so much attractive for many people as they used to be, basically because of the speed. And unfortunately, they are disappearing from the Chinese cities and Taiwanese, unluckily. In US, for me, a perfect system for e-bike classification. Class 1, normal electric bike, pedal assisted, very similar to Europe, just a bit faster. Class 2, the same stuff, but you can swip around with the throttle without pedaling. And Class 3, fast e-bike coming up to 28 miles per hour. You can see here in the chart, it's very clear. Class 1 and Class 2 is being seen as the normal bike for infrastructure. So you don't need to have a helmet, there is no age regulation and so on. There were some regulations in the national park, but we will see further. It has been changed as well. Class 3 is seen more like a moped, but as you can see in this last chart, even for the Class 3 bike, you don't need to have a driving license or license plate, unlike Europe, where the fast pedelec needs all of this, but you need to have a helmet. Logically, it's coming 28 miles an hour. It's quite fast. The latest changes in the US were made now in late September 2020, where the decision for the federal government was that the e-bike is not being seen as the motor vehicle anymore, so it can go also for the specific biking path, especially in the mountains or in the national park areas. And riders have a same rights as the normal bicycle riders. That's cool, I think. Let's speak about Europe now. We have two papers about e-bike regulations in Europe. The first is the norm and the second is the directive. Speaking about the norm first, you can see here it's EN 15194, well known as the EPEC norm. The first draft is dated 2009, starts to be effective 2011. Nowadays we have the latest amendment from 2017. The technical standard is a paper which is not legally binding in most of the EU countries, but it's expected that the products which are being brought to the market would be fulfilling with that, because this norm has been also translated to most of the EU languages. The utmost important regulation in this norm is 25 kilometers per hour of the maximum assisted speed for motor, and the performance, the nominal performance of the motor, 250 watts. The standard as it's today, as I said, it's been amended already. It's not fully complying with the vision of some national standardized bodies, like in the Netherlands, for example. They complain about the part speaking of the battery safety and battery disposal. From the practical view, I would say there are some manufacturers in Europe today who are not doing the certifications and testing against this standard. There was a group since 2016 under ISO, the International Standard Organization, who wants to implement the worldwide, the global standard for e-bikes. If you working in the cycling industry, you know that 4210 is the group of standards for bicycles. So 4210-10 supposed to be the new standard for electric bicycles. Unfortunately, the working group didn't find the agreement on the text prepared by the Shimano and Yamaha, the companies who established this group. At the moment, probably there should be a new working group getting together, and the new standard is probably 5 or more years away from us. So there will be no worldwide standard for electric bikes. But we are in Europe, so we speaking about the directive now, which is above the standard. Directive is a paper which should be in the law systems of each member states in the EU. And this directive 168 from the year 2013 is about the approval, the type approval of different road vehicles. They could have 2, 3 or 4 wheels, so they are not cars, but they are certified. This regulation has some exclusions. We will see most of them, but the most important exclusion, as you can see here, is exclusion of electric bicycles, which goes up to 25 km per hour and have the motor less than 250 watts of continuous rated power. You could ask, as I did, how these values actually appeared in the norm or in this directive. I did some research, and the speed was the most interesting part here, because you know that in US the assisted speed is cut off at 32 kilometers. In China now they have 25. So very probably this 25 kilometers here goes back to quite long time ago in 1962 and the following years. On the European market, there were these bicycles/scooters, very popular in Germany, called Mofa, Motorfahrrad, so cycles. Of course, propelled not by electricity, but by two-stroke engine motor. And they could be used without the driving license. They could be used by the youngsters from the 14 years old above, and so on. So very probably the first draft of the regulation, which was before this directive, was based on the 25 km/h, which was allowed at these vehicles. Other sources says that 25 kilometers limit was bring by Yamaha, who was this company was trying to persuade the EU Commission about the electric bicycles back in 1993, when there were no e-bikes on the market whatsoever. Either first or second example is true. The fact is that we have these regulations in Europe, and on the following pages we will speak about if they are okay or not. Here you can see some other exclusions from the norm. I will move my face a bit. The exclusions from the directive, not the norm, are up to 6 km/h. That's quite interesting. Most of the e-bikes on the market, they have so-called the walk mode. When you press some button and you keep it pressed, the bike starts to move itself. Some manufacturers, they also use it as the startup button. So you press the button, the bike starts to move, and you start to pedal into it. It goes from the electric wheelchairs, which have this kind of speed limit. Another exclusion from the directive are the bikes used for the competition. That's quite interesting because the UCI approved the World Cups on the e-bikes, and as far I know, all the e-bikes have motors limited to 25, but they should not, because this is excluded. What's also excluded are the military and medical and firefighters and all this kind of services. Again, I know many police e-bikes and many medical e-bikes, but still they use standard products which are limited in speed and in performance, which in case of emergency could be really, really limiting. Then its vehicles are primarily intended for off-road. Very, very much discussed topic, because the standard producers, standard brands are still limiting to pure mountain bikes, to full suspension mountain e-bikes to 25 kilometers and 250 watts. But they don't have to, because the exclusion G says that this kind of vehicles could be excluded. To say the full word, there is a new EN norm 17404, which is getting ready right now. There is some primary document which brings some specific regulations for these e-bikes. Also self-balancing vehicles, including those crazy stuff, is excluded, so those could go faster and are not limited with the motor performance. Here is the chart, which is which comes from the directive and which says how is it with the categories which goes to be should go for the type approval. Category L1EA, it's called the powered cycles. Category L1AB, it's called mopeds. When you see what is within these categories, you see that here is the maximum speed still for 25 kilometers, and here's the maximum speed of 45. But the continuous rated power of motor is higher here. It's not 250 watts, it's 1 kilowatt. Here it's up to 4 kilowatts. Looking at the speed, which always been a complaint from the users, the L1EA category doesn't solve it because speed is still limited. Here you have a higher speed of 45 kilometers. It's called the mopeds, but in this category, most of so-called fast e-bikes or fast pedelecs, which is the German word for e-bikes, is used, but the continuous rated power is 4 kilowatts. Can you imagine the bike with 4 kilowatts? And here are some limitations for three-wheel mopeds, which is not so much relevant. So in these categories, the bikes should have a type approval. It means that the samples should go to certification body, which goes through very long and very costly procedure to get a COC document and having these vehicles to be sold legally in the EU. And now is the fact. We were speaking about the speed and we were speaking about the motor performance. So let's take the motor performance first. How this appear in the directive, frankly, nobody knows. The fact is that most of the vehicles which are nowadays on the market and are being named as electric bicycles are exceeding this limit. We will speak about this later on, but having this fact, I usually get an answer, but there is an option. The option is the fast e-bike, the fast pedelec, and this is the solution. You saw before the L1EB are the mopeds up to 4 kilowatts, but normal electric bicycles are being built in this category. This category must have the type approval we spoke about, but you need to have a motorcycle helmet because it's a moped. Of course, you need to have a registration. It means you get a registration plate on the bike. Wow. There is an age limit. Logically, you need to have a driving license. You need to be 16 years older. And most interestingly, you are not about to use the cycling path because this is not a cycle anymore. This is a moped. And compulsory insurance and so on and so on. Except the Belgian, which has its own national regulations for this special, let's say, bikes. In the rest of Europe, this category makes really no sense. I am happy that I got the permission to show you this very interesting chart. This is a record of the real measuring of bikes, which is done by the Extra Energy from Germany. It's a very well-known test lab for the testing variety of e-bikes. Here we can see some brand bicycle equipped with the Bosch Performance system. It's the Bosch Performance 2019. So this middle system, Bosch has 3 categories of the motors. And here the pink line you can see should be to 250 watts, the limit for the rated power of e-bike motors, and the black line above, it's 600 watts, which is being reached by the motor most of the time of the riding. You can see this is the motor riding, this black, this dark blue, and the light blue is the performance of the biker, which goes up and down as the biking is performed. This chart was taken within the 60 seconds, so 1 minute, right? And the kilometers goes from 10 to 25, 23 at the end. And the height difference was about, I think, 25 meters. It's on the next slide. Here you can see it was 25 height meters taken in 60 seconds, and the length of the track was 450 meters. The motor performance 600 watts, the legs performance usually in average about 150 watts. At this picture you still may say, okay, well, but there is an exclusion for the vehicles which are designed for the outdoor use. But if we can click here, we have the similar uphill ride, but this is a public road network. So still you are getting about 600 watts from the motor coming up to the hill and performing 100 up to 150, 180 watts from your legs. If the motor would be helping only 250, most of the people would never use e-bikes because they would never make it up to the hill. That's the fact. Now speak about the speed. As we have seen that the motor performance is not really as it should be according to directive. How is it about the speed? The speed is much easier to measure than the motor performance, right? The police could take the laser and knows immediately how fast the cyclist is driving. There was a quite interesting research which was done by the British Cycling in recent years, and they have been asking people how fast they go and who they are. And as you can see in the chart, that most commuters, of course, they declare they go around 15 miles per hour, 25 kilometers up and downs. But there were many so-called fast commuters. I am a fast commuter. I need to use my e-bike to go from the A to B without any obstacles. So on the mechanical bike, I usually go much faster than 25. I go 30, 32. If I take my road bike, I go nearly 40. If I take an e-bike, which is taken down to 25 kilometers per hour, what happens is that it really breaks me. I didn't find any picture from my library, but it's usually like you see on this picture. You going on the e-bike, which is 25 kilometers per hour, and you are being overtaken by the folks on the mechanical bikes, which usually goes much faster than you. My philosophy in the business always is, if I'm not sure about anything, I'm just asking the users what they want. We have a privilege to do every year an e-bike testing along with the famous bicycle magazine. And last year I decided to do alongside the e-bike test also the test for the speed. We producing this bicycle, it's called Egox Tracer, and we tuned the Egox Tracer for 25, 32 and above 32 speed. It was not 45, the motor is not capable to do so fast. It was somewhere about 40 kilometers the top speed. We took a group of 18 participants here, mixed male, female, experienced riders and greenhorns on e-bike. And we gave them the bike and some test circuit, and after that just two simple questions. How did you feel riding this bike? And how did you feel by safety on this bike? And they tested 25, 32, 45 or 40 above version. Very logically, the fastest one was the best for the ride feeling. More about half of the participants in test says it was perfect. About safety, it was a bit different. They didn't feel so safe on such a speedy bike, especially the newbies on the e-bikes, but they didn't feel safe on the 25 kilometer version as well, because the test was done in 50% in the traffic, on the flat surface with the cars, with no bicycle lane, and they feel much safer at the 32 kilometers per hour version. After that, we asked them about the chipping, whether they will be interested to chip this bike, their e-bike, if the bike will go 32 kilometers per hour. There were only 13 participants because some of them didn't have the e-bike yet, so they didn't know how to answer the question. About 76%, 77% nearly out of this group says that if their bike will go 32 kilometers naturally, they will have no reason to chip it, to make it faster. So here you see the results from the people. Unfortunately, most of the bicycle manufacturers or the motor manufacturers, they are not really sharing my idea about the speed. For example, Bosch on its website is declaring that the increased shutdown speed over 25 kilometers may create load which is not accounted in the bicycle design and so on. I don't really agree with that, and I show you the example why. There is also German manufacturer, Riese and Miller, producing really famous and really well done e-bikes. They also export e-bikes to US market, and they also manufacture so-called fast pedelecs with all the certification for L1E-B category. But if you see those bikes at the pictures from the very left, this is standard pedelec e-bike, 25 kilometers. In the middle, there is a 32 kilometers, 20 miles version for export to US. And the right, there is a fast pedelec e-bike. They all have the same design and same structure, of the frame. Of course, the fast pedelec may have slightly different equipments, like a license plate, like a light, like a horn, but the same structure of the frame. And also the engine is always the same. It's Bosch Performance CX, which have software limitation for 45, 32 and 25 kilometers per hour here. So I disagree that the increasing of speed, let's say from 25 to 32, may create any threat for the e-bike owners. So now we know that most people want to go faster on their e-bike than 25 kilometers. So what they do if the e-bike doesn't go faster? They just ask their dealers, and they said, yes, it could be done. On some bikes, it should be done by hardware, which is implemented inside the motor and override the previous or the original software settings. At some e-bikes, it's just enough to change the settings on the display if the software from the bike producer allows it. In the early days, there were some manipulations with the speed sensors, which also confused the control unit of the motor, and the bike goes faster. Unfortunately, most of the chips which are on the market today, they makes the bike goes fast up to 45 kilometers. So the speed of fast pedelecs, which is performed by the normal motors, not the 4 kilowatt motors. And many national regulations or the safety agencies, they usually mention that the 45 is a dangerous speed. So I am personally voting for 32 kilometers, the speed which is in the Northern America, which is being seen safe there, and from our research also the speed which is accepted by most users, that they will not go for manipulating their bikes if they get this speed from their electric bicycle. Unfortunately, it's not true yet. So most of the bikes which are being sold in our country, as you can see, they are being chipped or manipulated. The same amount is in Germany or elsewhere in Europe. But there are countries in the world which seems to be somehow smarter or happier than the others. What you can see here is the regulation which comes from the National Transport Agency of New Zealand. So if you read it with me, you can see that the e-bike maximum speed is 25 for newbies and 32 for experienced riders. Whether you are newbie or experienced riders, you could ask yourself. I haven't been to New Zealand. Please give me some comments if this is really implemented this way. I would be very happy to know much more. The second regulation is also perfect. There is no limit of any watts or Newton meters. The e-bike just gives the power in a proportion of the amount of you pedal. So you more pedal, you get more performance. You are not able to pedal enough. This is not a scooter, this is just a bicycle. So you get much less performance from the motor. Simple and works well. The third regulation is also perfect. The e-bikes with the front hub motor location, in the very ancient time of e-bikes, many Dutch bikes and so on, they are not very safe because of the torsion of the low pressure on the front wheel. So they are not really welcomed at New Zealand. Well, so we can either move to New Zealand, or we could strive to have perfect legislation in Europe as well. So what do you think? And it's quite easy. Not myself, but many associations like Extra Energy, like Light Electric Vehicle Association, and other folks, they just propose those few proposals for great legislation. Just bind the power of the motor on the human power. It's very easy with the current state of systems which have the torsion sensors everywhere. Make the speed 32, because then the electric bike could be the same speed as the mechanical bike on the flat surface. Excluded from any directive, just call it a bicycle, because it is a bicycle, of course. So make it open for any age, don't require driving licenses, helmets if you feel fine without the helmet, and so on. With that legal framework, much more people would be happy to use e-bike not only for recreational purpose, but also for the daily transport. And that will make our cities much nicer and cleaner. I'm absolutely sure about this. Okay, now forget the speed and forget the watts. I have two more things for you, which may be cool implemented for European legislation. The first comes from states, from the West Coast. In some cities, there is this stop and go regulation implemented. It's not for e-bikes, it's generally for cyclists. Means if there is a red light on the intersection, the cyclist should be using it as the stop sign. So stop, look around and go. If there is a stop for the cars, the cyclist could use it as the give a ride. I am daily city cyclist, and I already use this performance even in the city which has not implemented these rules yet, and it's much faster, I would say, because as the cyclist I have a much better view than the car driver, and passing the intersections when there is no traffic, so not waiting for the cars which are behind me for the green light, is much safer. So I hope some lawmakers will study the output from the Idaho stop system in states and try to implement it soon to EU legislation. And the last part is my favorite one. It's about the alcohol consumption, because many people use e-bike every day, so they also use it under some influence of alcohol, and this is quite nice to see in what's the regulation within the Europe. I came from the country where we have a 0.0 allowance for the alcohol, for the cars, and even for the bicycles. Sometimes, of course, it's misused. Very interesting is the limit in Germany, which is 0.8 promille, which is quite a lot. And originally it was twice as much, which could be a lot for anyone. In many countries there is 0.5 limits, the same like for the car. And my favorite drunk limits are from the northern countries and UK. You can read it here. as long as the cyclists go the straight way and there are no visible trace of drunkenness, the police will let them go. And I think this is perfect. Thanks a lot that you spent your time with me today. If you may have any questions, there will be a Q&A session tomorrow, as I heard, or you will be noticed by the conference organizers. If you want to drop me a personal message, just do it right here to my email address. I am wishing you a very nice day and bye-bye.